Fine. Good. Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
We can.
Yes.
Yeah. So, welcome to this meeting of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority. The members of the authority are in attendance via video conferencing. The meeting is being live streamed on the authority's website and will also be available for repeated viewing. Those participating in the meeting are consenting to being recorded, and the use of those images for broadcast purposes. Also in attendance is Councillor Dave Stewart, leader of Isle of Wight Council, who is an invited guest to the HFRA meeting. I think I'm welcoming Enzo Vigilia, assistant to the PCC. I think he's here. Hope so. So I'll begin the meeting by naming the members who are in attendance for the public record. I'm Councillor Chris Carter, the chairman of the meeting. Also present, Councillor Ros Chad, vice chairman, Councillor Liz Fairhurst, Councillor Jason Fazakerley, Councillor Jonathan Glenn, Councillor Jeff Hockley, Councillor Sharon Mintoff, Councillor Roger Price, Councillor Redian Vaughan, Councillor David Simpson, I've been told this morning, is apologies because he is not well, so we send our best wishes to David. During the meeting, if a member wishes to speak, they will indicate this to me by using the raise your hand function as the primary method. In the event that that function is unavailable to you, the secondary method is to use the meeting chat function and type RTS request to speak. All decisions will be reached through a vote conducted by calling out abstain, against, or for, with a pause for opportunity so members can speak up at the relevant time. The outcome of any vote will be confirmed by Katie Sherwood, the Democrat and Member Services Officer, before moving to the next item on the agenda. I'd like to remind members that the Constitution's standing orders will apply, so please keep your microphone muted unless you have been called to speak. And you will be visible on the screens to the public and other members, even if you are not speaking. Right, so moving to the agenda. I've lost the screen here. So apologies for absence. Katie, if you're with me, you would have heard me say that I've received apologies this morning relating to David Simpson. I don't think we have any other apologies.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Members, you're all aware of that, but I will read it for the benefit of the tape. To enable members to disclose to the meeting any disclosable pecuniary interest they may have in any matter on the agenda for the meeting, where that interest is not already entered in the authority's register of interest, and any other pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest in any such matter that members may wish to disclose. So I know you're all aware of that, but if anything comes up during the meeting, please indicate. So moving on to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Please turn to page 3. I'm going to take those minutes. So page 3. Oh no, so page 1 of the minutes. Page 2, page 3, page 4, and page 5. Are you content that that is a true record of the meeting that was held on 9th of December?
Agreed, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, matters arising, you'll see in those minutes under 303, Grenfell Tower progress report. And this has been in the news just this day with an anticipated announcement from the government today about further funding to assist leaseholders and flat owners around the country, and indeed probably others who've got difficulties with their properties. I will invite Stu Adamson to give us an update on the progress so far. And we're not going to have a long debate, but I will then invite members to ask any question based on what Stu may have to tell us. So over to you, Stu Adamson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, members. Just in response to the last meeting, I thought I'd just go through a couple of things. So there was some legislation improvements which were debated by members, and we returned the consultation back to government. That important legislation, so one bit was around the building system, as you will recall, and the other bit was around amendments to the fire safety order. They are still progressing through Parliament. There's a number of amendments that have been proposed, and so there's no real substantive progress with those other than they're in Parliament and going through the parliamentary process. As the Chairman mentions in the news today, there's some talk around potential future funding or more future funding for the removal of cladding, and this is this is being led by the government, obviously, to remove the cladding, which was very similar to that was contributed to the fire at Grenfell. Also, part of the debate, and we hear this locally, is around, in some instances, waking watches being employed. This is where buildings require a live fire watch. So to make sure that they're safe, so that residents would be able to get out of a fire very quickly. And the costs to residents, and obviously there's quite a bit of concern around that, and we've been working with stakeholders around what those concerns look like. So what I can assure you is that through our both our fire station teams and our professional fire safety department, we're doing a lot where all those buildings are, and we're working really hard to make sure we offer visits to the highest risk people, but also offer the advice to those people that are living in those buildings to keep them safe, and also for them to feel and be reassured that they're safe. So just moving on to the inquiry. So the inquiry is ongoing, as you will see through the press. From the first phase of the inquiry, there was a report which set out a number of recommendations, and I'd like to give you that quite quick information that we have a lead officer that's driving these, and we're about 75% complete with the findings that have been actioned locally for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So it's a really good progress. And some of those things, just to give you a flavour of some of those improvements, so it's about improving the connectivity of fire control with the fire ground, so that any incident in a high-rise building, we're able to manage the evacuation better. And that includes giving fire survival guidance to a number of people. It also looks at the equipment that we to make sure that our information that we get into the organisation through fire control is very much enhanced and quickly able to be put to the scene. And then finally, just to mention the inspection programme, which is part of the Home Office Fire Protection Board. We've spoken about this in the past, where we've received in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight some grant funding to increase our resources, specifically in the area of protection, to give us the additional resources to go out and inspect these buildings. So we know that we've got just under 300 high-rise residential buildings which are on the list from Home Office, and our job is to inspect those in accordance with the Home Office demands from the Fire Protection Board. What we're doing with those extra resources is we're also using that opportunity of visiting the premises to do an inspection for risk. So our firefighters are safer as a result of the information that we're gathering, as well as the public. And the Home Office deadline for all of those buildings to be done is by December this year. And I'm happy to say that we're ahead of schedule. We've got some contingency built in, and we should finish early, even though we've had obviously the pandemic issues and delays. So hopefully that gives you a flavour of where we are with Grenfell, both in the news and then locally, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Stu. That was very, very helpful. Right, members, as I said earlier, we don't want a really long debate about this, but it is such an important item. So if you have any questions, please indicate. No? Okay. Right. So thank you for that.
Chairman?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, not so much a question, but a comment. I believe that, all our high-rise blocks owned by the City Council do have sprinklers now retrofitted. And we are now in the process of retrofitting sprinklers in our supported accommodation blocks, because obviously there's quite a high risk. So that is something that we're doing in Southampton. So
yes,
I'd add that in.
Thank you for that, Sharon. We did previously acknowledge the work done by Southampton City Council in installing sprinkler systems in the high rise, and I can't at the moment. I don't know whether the Chief Officer can remind me, but it was quite some time back, I think, wasn't it, that Southampton took that that decision, which was really good. Do you want to add anything?
Just sorry, I clicked on button. But yeah, absolutely, Chairman. Thank you. And I think Councillor Mintoff absolutely highlights the importance of those buildings. And tragically, our own firefighters lost in one of them, particularly some time ago now, but never forgotten. One of the things we are absolutely, and you as a fire authority have been absolutely clear on, is your position on sprinklers and the need for them in some of these buildings, and we'll continue on your behalf to push that. We obviously will be revisiting that particular statement in the near future, so we can be clear for our local authorities as well as other industry across Hampshire and Isle of Wight, where we think, where you think as a fire authority and major chief officer, feel that sprinklers are a really important part of that safety arrangement. But again, this focus right now, as Stu's outlined, is on the cladding issues and some of the building defects that exist, and trying to rectify those defects is incredibly complex. And with the advent of the fire safety bill, the amendments that are coming through, we'll see that the fire authority themselves will have more power to act in that space, so we can actually help in that regard. But it's a deeply confusing picture right now for our residents. It's deeply unsettling for us all, and we'll look forward to being able to remedy that as soon as we're able to. Thanks, John.
Right, thank you for that. Anybody got any further comment they wish to make on that item? Fine. Right, thank you. So thank you again, Stu, for that update. So we now move on from the minutes to item 4, deputations. I have none. Moving to item 5, Chairman's announcements. Well, I really only have one announcement. I'm sure you'll be delighted, but there will be more announcements at the shadow meeting coming later today. So this is the last meeting of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, and I suppose, as with many organisations, both in the public and private sector, the evolution of change has been a necessary factor. Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority came into being in April 1997, so it will have lasted just around 24 years. And during those 24 years, there have been a number of changes, and they culminate in the new authority, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority, coming into effect on the 1st of April. I suppose we can probably expect to receive some record of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority's achievements being in due course being recorded at the Fire Heritage Trust, which is run by retired Deputy Chief Alan House at the Solent Sky Museum. That is something that maybe we look forward to in the future. But this is indeed the last meeting of HFRA. So, moving on the agenda, member development.
Mr. Chairman, before you move off that item, do you not think we ought to place on record, as this is the last meeting of the Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, our thanks to all of the officers and staff of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service for what they've done over the years since 1997, and because I think that should be placed on record, our thanks to all the staff.
Yes, that is a very valid point. I think I got that to mention at the subsequent meeting, but I take your point that within the minutes of this meeting, it should be recorded. So I'm happy to accept what you say there, Roger, and record our appreciation over the last 24 years, which have seen constant change, and note our appreciation at how the fire service, the senior officers, and indeed all the firefighters have adapted to that change, and we have a fire service in Hampshire, which we all think is second to none.
Mr. Chairman, it's not only just the firefighters and the senior officers, it's all staff, because the backroom staff are doing as much work as the others.
Yeah, I'm happy to be corrected on that point, Roger. I agree with you entirely. It's all service. Right, thanks, Stuart.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to echo the appreciation that Councillor Price referred to, but on behalf of the island in particular, and of course over the last 12 months, really, the impressive work that the fire service are doing as part of the whole public sector team to support the response to COVID. Certainly on the island, it's been extremely reassuring. I've had good briefings, and I know that the island community, who probably won't notice the difference between the old fire authority and the new, because they'll probably feel it's business as usual, because that's the high standard that the fire authority already provides. So and that's the way I put it across. So I would just, on behalf of the Isle of Wight, like to acknowledge the excellent work, and I suppose at the same time to acknowledge the departure of Steve Apter, the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, who I understand is going to retire to sunny climes. I'm not sure if that's the Isle of Wight or elsewhere, but I'm certainly would like to acknowledge the excellent work he's done to get to the highest position in his. A big thank you on the records. Would be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dave. Now we've got Councillor Glenn.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just thought we ought to add the dedication of current and past HFRA chairman over that period of 24 years?
Well,
They should be thanked.
thank you for that, Jonathan. I can only at this stage recall my immediate predecessor, who, as you will be aware, was Royston Smith,
Exactly.
Member of Parliament. I can't actually recall who was before Royston, but
Doesn't matter, Chairman.
we will have a record of them. Right, as you in a way sort of preempted what I'm probably going to say at the shadow board later today, but I'm quite happy and it is appropriate that we record your comments in the meeting, in the minutes of this meeting. Right, thank you. So item 6 is member development. I will have things to say at the later meeting. Has anybody got anything they wish to comment on at this meeting? No? Right, okay, thank you. So moving on to the substantive items on the agenda. Page 9 on your agenda, the trading company. This is going to be presented by yourself, Chief Officer. I was a member of 3S Fire Limited from the outset when it commenced in 2013 as a limited company, and subsequently became the chairman when I became chairman of the authority. It was set up for the reasons that it was, because at the time there was the prospect of becoming involved with a very large organisation. That didn't come to pass, and now I think it's appropriate that we consider a structural reform. So I'll hand over to the Chief Officer.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. So the paper, I hopefully had a chance to have a good peruse of the paper. But first of all, important that I stress that I have no role with the limited company 3S Fire. So I present this as your Chief Officer to make recommendations to the Fire Authority about how I would suggest you develop your trading arm. So you'll recall, and the Chairman alluded to it just a second ago, in the paper we describe the original structure for your trading company was set up to capitalise on opportunities which the service may be able to use in terms of generating further income or trading for the Fire Authority to support the ongoing running of the Fire Rescue Service. So the kind of intent or the structure behind that was very clear, in as much as it was a limited company, so it was a commercial company to trade, but it was owned by you as the Fire Authority in order to provide funds to run the fire service, no other reason. So, and the company structure was considered at that time, and it was agreed that the limited company, limited by share sort of structure was best in the face of the opportunities which were in place at that time. Subsequently, some of those opportunities never emerged, but the company has continued to thrive and do a fantastic job for the Fire Authority in terms of generating funds for the running of the service, which obviously I'm grateful for as the Chief Officer. So the recent events, I guess, not only of COVID-19 impacting on companies, but that's not the real reason for changing this. The company continues to be in a relatively good shape, considering the difficult times that we've been through and all commercial companies are faced with. But this is about now reshaping the company to face the future challenges and indeed further assist the Fire Authority and the fire service in delivering its products and services. So the paper here contains a number of considerations for you to think about. So the board itself, the 3S Fire board, which is constituted by a number of officers, have considered the best structure for the future, including the chief exec of the managing director, sorry, of the company, and they've come with a view which is in the proposal today. But also, your own stakeholder committee on the 11th of November agreed with that view, and I'll certainly, via the chairman, perhaps ask the stakeholder committee chair to have a view on that in a second. But they've all agreed on the recommendations which are attached to this paper. So in other words, the company itself would like to move in this direction. The stakeholder board, which represent you, also feel that's the right movement. So therefore, I'm confident that the proposals in front of you today are sound and for the right reasons. But just to step you through those carefully, so you understand the proposal in front of you today. The proposal is to move from a limited company by share to a community interest company. Now, in essence, the company still remains a commercial company. So in all essence and purposes, it will continue to do the same thing. We have the same customers and have the same trading opportunities. It will continue to operate as it does in the main. The main difference is how it's constructed legally. And also it allows much more transparency and clarity over what the company is doing and what the benefits derived from that company are used for. So the CIC, sometimes known as social enterprises, as described in the paper, there's over 10,000 of these types of organisations now across the country. Some now are run by fire risk authorities, and we've seen a really good example, and we use this in the paper up in Humberside Fire Risk Authority, who use a community interest company. So the difference between the CIC and the limited companies, the CIC has certain asset locks in place, so you cannot use the money back into dividends other than for the purposes described, and it's very limited how you can move money back into the shareholder owners. So the purposes of the company are very clearly laid out in the articles which are attached in Appendix A. We'll come to that in a second. But you have to have a clear social purpose. In other words, your objects of your company need to be clearly focused on the benefit to our communities. That way it qualifies for a CIC, and then you have to do annual returns to ensure that the company is still operating against those objects. So it's quite heavily regulated, which is helpful in terms of your clarity and your key benefit going forward. It must share its benefits with the community. So if I can point you towards page 24 of your packs, because I want to just point you, this is Appendix A, because I think this is the kind of nub of the proposal. So essentially, if agreed today, these objects or the model articles would be govern the company. And if you see on paragraph 5 there, it lays out in those 5 proposed objects of the company its limitations of liability, its powers, and those objects. So in other words, what it does. This is the clear purpose. And in there, the team, legal teams, as well as the board and the stakeholder panel have laid out what they think should be done by this company in terms of how it should be limited and how it should be focused on spending its money for this purpose. So just give you a real-time example, and this is in the paper as well. Other for fire authorities to advertise a certain public campaign, where sometimes the fire authority may be criticised for spending public money in that way. A CIC can use its money as it chooses, as long as it follows the object set by yourselves as a fire authority, as the owner of the company. So that enables you to control some of the decisions being made by that board in terms of setting the objects here today, but equally allows the company to do and focus on these objects. And I think that's a really helpful move forward in the future, as opposed to what can sometimes be seen as a limited private company passing funds back to a fire authority. That's very difficult to be transparent around because of the commercial interests of the company. So why this is laid out to you today is that the objects are clear. So we talked about training and development, risk management, emergency response, risk and prevention activities, and other business activities and services believed to be directly or indirectly beneficial to the community. It's got a broad set of abilities for the company to do. They would pay directly for something which each other. So the example I used earlier about defibrillators, clearly there would be a request from the service for that support from the company, and that dialogue will continue into the future. So the reason this is absolutely an open and transparent paper about a trading company is because of the wish and the challenges that happen nationally around the seeming murkiness of some limited companies. we've always been clear about the limited company here. It's a very open process. The CIC will give it further transparency, be very clear about its objects, and these are on public display today, as well as your decision will be on public display about the objects. And then, should you agree, the time frame for adoption of the CIC model is laid out also in the paper for you to see. So, if I can, I'll happily take questions in a second. If I can point you towards, Chairman, with your permission, to the as it continuing to trade as it does, or we can move it into a community interest company, which is the recommendation, for the reasons that I've laid out and I've tabled in the paper. So the recommendations include the approval of the conversion with our legal team to make that happen. They also include, on 42 there, the adoption of the Articles of Association, and in particular those objects that we just talked about, being clear about what you are comfortable as representatives of our communities in this CIC focusing on and doing. The change of the name 3S5 Limited to 3S5 Community Interest Company, that's really important to make sure the public are aware it's a community interest company and not a limited company. And the authorising the chairman and vice chairman of the stakeholder committee to sign the resolutions at their next meeting. So that's a set of recommendations within the paper for you to consider. But on that basis, I know Paul's online as well as our legal advisor, and for sure him and his team have looked over this and are party to these recommendations also. But I'm sure if there's questions around the legality of the articles, I'll certainly lean on Paul to answer those questions better than I can. So, Chairman, at that point, I'm happy to take questions and your thoughts.
Thank you. Well, I fully support these recommendations, and they will, if this is agreed, enable the authority to have close cooperation, collaboration, if appropriate, with the charities that the authority is associated with. I'm referring to the Blue Lamp Trust and Prince's Trust, and indeed going forward there may be other charities that the authority may wish to work with. So, who's Roger? You're chairman. Oh, Jonathan, you're wishing to comment? Yes, over to you, John.
I'm happy for Roger to speak first if he's going to. He is chairman. He is the chairman of it. I want to ask a question, but Roger can go ahead first.
Roger, did you want to comment?
I would just like to say a few words. Thank you, Chris. I think that Neil has explained it very well of why we want to go down the CIC route. I think that from my point of view, it will make the company much more visible to the public, and we'll be able to do much more public work and support the service in that way. Under the current regime, they are very restricted in what they can and can't do as a company, whereas this will open it up to be much wider, and I think that it will be much more beneficial. I suppose the only concern that I have, which I did raise at the subcommittee meeting about it, was that whereas money is passed over, it won't be quite so transparent in that sense in the future, because it will be doing good work, which won't be seen in the same way. But I think that the good work that it will be doing, as Neil explained, like defibrillators, etc., will be much better, and the public will respond to that in a better way than they would by just seeing that, well, we've given over £100,000 to the fire service. So I think that it will be much more open. The public, I'm sure, will see it, and I think it's only for the better for both the service and the company, and I fully support it. So hopefully members will agree at the end when we come to the resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. So I'm not quite sure who was first here. I've got Dave Stewart and you, Jonathan. We'll go to Dave first.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to offer my views of support for the briefing from the Chief Officer and my own experience of these echoes what he said. It gives in the modern world, a bit of flexibility to the authority and to the fire service to, if you like, work with the community in different ways. And I think this is a good thing to do. At the end of the day, it'll all be transparent. If anybody wants to stick in FOIs and other things, they'll always be able to do that. And I think it's great to hear that Hampshire Fire Authority are leading on this, and congratulations to Neil for the presentation.
Thank you, Dave. Jonathan, over to you.
Right, thank you very much, Chairman. I echo everything that Roger has said, Councillor Price has said, and a lot of organisations are going this way as well, which makes it, from a responsibility and legal point of view, it's a great improvement. They can run in a, let's say, a more flexible way. I just wanted to go on to page 11, Chairman. It says on 14, under benefits and regulations of CIC, the regulatory safeguards associated with CICs provide an extra level of protection and distance for Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority, which is basically, it distances itself from HFRS. Do I assume that members, especially those who are on the stakeholder committee, are equally protected? I want to make sure that we're equally protected. I'm sure we are. I just want that basically. I just want to air that in public.
Paul, are you able to give that reassurance?
Yeah, I mean basically the company law structures associated with community interest companies aren't radically different to ordinary limited companies. So the limits of the authority's liability remain. It is still a limited company, and obviously that extends to members who are exercising those functions as the shareholder on behalf of the authority. So yes, I think is the short answer. Members are, very well protected and will exercise the shareholder function role appropriately in line with CIC regulation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right, do we have any other speakers? Anybody else wishing to comment? Right, so can I take you please to page 17 of the recommendations? I will read these out. So 41, that Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority approved the conversion of 3S Fire Limited to a community interest company limited by shares to take effect shortly after the start of 2021-22 financial year. 42, that Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority approved the Articles of Association, Appendix A, to be adopted by Hampshire, to be adopted by 3S Fire Limited on its conversion to a community interest company, and the wording of the draft member resolutions at Appendix B. 43, that Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority approved the change of the name 3S Fire Limited to 3S Fire Community Interest Company. 44, that Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority authorises the chairman or vice chairman of the stakeholder committee to sign the written members' resolution at Appendix B in order to implement the authority's decision to convert to a CIC, with such resolutions to be signed sent to the registrar of companies together with the application as is required by the Companies Act. Right, are you all content with those recommendations? Everybody agreed?
Agreed.
All agreed. Thank you very much. We've agreed that. Roger, you've noted the date, have you, that you've got to sign? It's
29th onwards.
It's Appendix B, page 59 and 60 of the the agenda.
Yes, I have noted that, and I noticed it's during the week commencing the 29th of March.
Right. Okay. So.
Awesome responsibility, Roger.
I'm not about it. Passes to you, Jonathan.
You stay alive, Roger.
Right. Well, it's up to the two of you to sort that out between the two of you. Okay. So thank you all for your comments there. I think that was a useful short debate on that important item. At a very important time that the authority makes that change. As we move forward, incorporating the island in the new authority, I'm sure this will be of benefit to the whole community. Right, so moving on then, agenda item 8. So this is minutes of the HFRA Standards and Governance Committee, which was held on the 17th of November 2020. And I call up the chairman of that meeting, Liz Fairhurst, to present those minutes to us.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to present the minutes on the 17th of November 2020 Standards and Governance Committee, and would ask members to accept and note the external audit HFRA audit response report. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody got any comment they wish to make? Sharon, over to you, Councillor Minton.
Thank you very much. On page 63 of the pack, I want to draw attention to the attention of members. The resolved be that our internal auditors received the external quality assessment, and that it was it was a very good outcome for them, and I think that it should be noted.
Sorry, Shaq, can you just repeat what you said? I couldn't quite pick up that. It came over slightly distorted, what you were saying there.
Okay. Page 63 of our pack, under resolved B, that the outcomes of the external quality assessment of the Southern Internal Audit Partnership Assurance they achieved a high standard, and I think that should be noted. So
right.
I just wanted to draw members' attention to it, that our internal auditors are of a very high standard.
Right, yes, thank you for drawing our attention to that. That enables me to what you just said, because Councillor Glenn and I were in some Hampshire County Council pension panel training very recently, when it was highlighted that the internal audit had very recently been subject to inspection, and they passed that with flying colours. So yes, thank you for drawing that to our attention, and it hopefully it gives members some confidence in internal audit, or further confidence. And I would also add something that I've mentioned to you privately, that Jonathan and I, in that training, found it really beneficial, and I made the point that given that governance is going to play, I believe, a greater part in inspections going forward, that there should be training, and I think it will happen later this year, training for all of you, for the whole of the authority, to have a complete understanding of the process and the reasoning for internal audit. So, fine. Any other comment? Dave Stewart, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A comprehensive document. I just wanted to have a question on item page 65 131, where there's a resolution for an independent person to come to the authority. 3 points really. One, has that been circulated to the Isle of Wight so that if there's an independent person who might want to come onto it from the island, they could apply for that position? A small query on the allowance, which is very low, £100. I didn't know quite what that was due to cover, but I presume there's also the fact that any independent person, whether from Hampshire or the Isle of Wight, would be able to cover their expenses in coming to any real meetings when we get back into them, because it is good to encourage. And I've just done an interview for some independent remuneration panel on the island, and we had a list of 11, which we took down to 6, and the standard was extremely high. And my experience of this is people aren't doing this for the money, obviously, but they do have a genuine desire to add value to a body like this. It's something they really do, and I was impressed with the standard we had. I suspect we'll get the same here. So that's my 3 points, Chair.
Right, thank you for that. So, who's going to answer those queries? Paul, are you with us, Paul?
Yeah, thanks. I am, Chairman. I think Councillor Mintoff may have a hand up as well there. So.
But I don't know whether she's going to answer that. Sharon, I'll come back to you then.
Okay. It's about the appointment of the independent person, in that it was agreed between sort of the 3 members of the Standards and Governance Committee that were appointed to deal with this matter. So Councillor Glenn, Councillor Price and myself, we had 2 applications for this position. The existing independent person plus the independent person for Hampshire County Council. We agreed the recommendation will be going to Standards and Governance later on this month, that we appoint both of these as independent persons. So that maybe answers Councillor Stewart's, part of Councillor Stewart's question.
Yeah, happy with that. Happy with that. That's good.
Right.
Well done.
Thank you. Right, I think Councillor Chad, you were raising your hand, were you? Ross Chad? Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. Anybody else to wishing to comment on this paper? Right, thank you. So we're all happy to accept those minutes. All agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, so now we've can we confirm that we accepted item 10 earlier in the meeting as part of the minutes of the 9th of December. You all happy to confirm?
Chairman.
Is that affirmative?
Agreed and noted.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So we don't need to proceed then to exclude the public because we've dealt with item 10. So that concludes this meeting. The final meeting of Hampshire Fire and Rescue Authority concludes it at 10 to 11, 10:50, and we will reconvene for. I saw a cat earlier on. I can hear a dog now.
No, that was the cat.
The cat was with Jason. I don't know who's got the
cat's mine, but it's
is it your dog, Liz? your dog is beside Jason's
My
cat
dog is great,
on my
yeah.
screen.
We're still live, Chairman.
So that concludes our meeting. So thank you all for your attendance, and I will see you again at about 11:15. Go and have a cup of tea or cup of coffee.
Cheerio,
Thank you
Chairman.
very much, Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you.